No one told, your military advisors did not tell you, no, we should just keep 2,500 troops. It's been a stable situation for the last several years. We can do that. We can continue to do that.
No one said that to me that I can recall.
I recommended that we maintain 2,500 troops in Afghanistan. I'm confident that the President heard all the recommendations and listened to them very thoughtfully.
We talk about price tags. It is zero price tag on the debt. We're going to pay for everything we spend.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix? Yes or no?
Look, is it transphobic? Look.
Is there a doctor available? Oh my goodness. What the hell is going on?
Honey,
all right.
I'm going to take a stand right here, right now. Only women have a cervix. Was that so hard?
I don't know. I don't know if that's true anymore. I mean, I don't know what birthing people have and don't have anymore. But that's the... By the way, how long do you think this madness lasts? I mean, does this all explode together? Because we're all playing make believe. When somebody says that question should make somebody that uncomfortable means somewhere something happened that made so many people who were once, I think, sane people so guilt-ridden and afraid of something happened. I don't know where. But normal people don't say that. And I know that half the country does, maybe half the world does now. But it was probably 2015. I had a conversation when the Bruce Jenner stuff happened. And he said that he was now a woman, etc. And I had a debate at Herald Radio with people in their 20s, early 20s. One of them, of course, is in academia now. And I said, guys, there's no way he can say whatever he wants about whatever he wants. He is biologically male, no matter what. That is, and they said no, absolutely not. Because he doesn't identify as male. I said, but it doesn't matter. Because in 1,000 years, when they find the body and the fossil, whatever, it's going to be a male. He can say whatever, it doesn't matter. They said, no, he's just as much a woman as any other woman because he identifies as it. And I said to one of the ladies there, I said, that's not true. He doesn't have a female biology. And she said, well, what do you mean exactly? Angry. She was angry. College had taught these people to be angry. I said, well, for instance, he can't have children. He doesn't have whatever to have children. To which she exploded at me and said she probably also was unable to have children due to whatever she was born with.
And so does that make her not a woman?
So, right. So that I was now indicting her because it was so important that Bruce Jenner's feelings not be hurt from 3,000 miles away. So we all had to play make-believe so much.
Well, also, you or I can't do anything to Bruce or Caitlyn Jenner because he or she is a rich person and a celebrity and has everything they want in their life and everything else. Like, if I call Bruce Jenner he or him over here on our podcast that many, many, many people listen to, but not enough so that I think Bruce Jenner's heard of it, he's not going to know. It's not going to affect him. Doesn't do anything.
Yeah, but even
he's still going to wake up tomorrow morning wealthier than and more validated and affirmed in life than you or I will.
Even so, why does he get to change the rules, not for just himself, but for us? Suddenly he gets to change the rules. We're now in trouble. He's decided it all changed. What we've learned, etc., has all changed, and suddenly it's an offense. What wasn't an offense 4 years ago is now an offense. And so...
Well, and the Jenner thing to me is kind of interesting because, I mean, if you read, like, those types of magazines, like Us Weekly or Star Magazine or whatever, there had been rumors about this for a while before Caitlyn Jenner appeared on the scene. And it was sort of, like, almost too wild to believe that that could be true, that somebody who was that famous and, you know, a paragon of masculinity, really, as an athlete and all this stuff, that would come out as transgender and declare that they were actually a woman the whole time. Like, I couldn't have imagined it at the time that there were those rumors about Bruce Jenner where people were speculating about like his surgeries on his face and saying like, is he trying to look more feminine and all this stuff. Like, I kind of just assumed it was just like not great facelifts and stuff. And, you know, and I couldn't imagine that would be true, that Bruce Jenner would come out as transgender. And, you know, it's so rapidly shifted in such a short amount of time that now it's like everybody seems to be transgender.
Oh, no, absolutely. And there's no way everybody is. And by the way, this thing, like we used to play the Monty Python thing, you know, where's a fetus going to gestate in a box from Life of Brian, to laugh at this as if it was even a possibility that you can say that you're a man or that's fine. And you can, separating gender from biology, you identify, whatever, you can, I guess you can identify, you have the right to identify as anything you want. But the fact is making me identify you as whatever you want.
Yeah, but also, it's helpful when words that mean specific things continue to mean those specific things, because otherwise you lose a lot of meaning in your language, right? Like, so in Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, he talks about this phenomenon where, you know, the word gentleman used to mean like a particular class of person who was like part of the landed aristocracy, and it meant this particular thing, and that was a useful word. But now the word gentleman just means somebody who's nice, if you call somebody a gentleman, which is like fine, but we already had words for nice, and you know, we didn't have a word for gentleman other than that. So now if it just means nice, now we've lost something, because now we just have a duplicate word for nice and, you know, not something else. So if the word woman doesn't mean woman anymore, but means like some new thing where it's like what you feel like in your head today, you know, then that's fine. But like, now we don't have a word for what a woman is, which used to be kind of a useful category in my opinion, you know, like, because, but they're actually trying to erase the distinction. Like, they don't believe there's a meaningful distinction between men and women, right? Like, they think that deciding, like, the people who are not most regular people, but the people who are really activists about this, because I've known some people that have been really into this for a while, so I've followed what they've been saying about this for a long time. What they really and honestly believe about transgenderism is that when you're born, the doctor, for some reason, we as a society have decided that doctors are going to look at this random part of your anatomy and declare based on how big or small it is, which occurs as far as they're concerned on sort of a spectrum and not really in two distinct categories. They're going to decide how you're going to live your life in society, even though that doesn't determine anything. You know, they might as well decide to determine your whole life based on whether or not you have attached earlobes when you come out of the womb, and that they've just decided this. We've, as a society, for some reason, randomly, all the societies on the earth have decided to do this inexplicable thing, where we separate people into categories based on their genitals where they're born, and that everything else surrounding gender arises up out of that, and the category itself really has no meaning, you know? And so that's why they want to erase the language of like man and woman and everything else, because they believe that those are not legitimate, meaningful categories. But they actually are, as evidenced by the fact that we now have to make up all these new, stupid, crazy words like birthing person and chest feeding, and to define categories that never needed defining anymore before, because they were all enveloped in a very easy category that made sense and encompassed all of that. Historically, in modern day, like biologically, in every possible sense, that category encompassed everything that you needed to say when you said woman. But now, since woman just means like a person who, you know, likes to wear mascara and dresses, then it doesn't encompass any of that anymore. So now we're left without the category woman, and we have to make up stupid words.
When did we make it okay to be petulant to the point where society has to bend to you?
Well, they would say that you would be petulant if people persisted in calling you a girl.
But to be totally honest, I wouldn't. I wouldn't care.
But if everyone around you kept calling you, Tina, and a girl's name, and used girl pronouns about you all the time, and like put you in the
I would not
girls'
run
gym class
around
in
and
school.
scream and say my life has been put in danger. I wouldn't care. First of all, but that's different. I mean,
but like a kid in school, like a boy might like feel bad about himself and be driven. I'm playing devil's advocate, but like a boy, like a middle school boy, if was like being picked on by the other kids and called a girl's name and a girl, and they kept acting like he was a girl, that would be like traumatizing at a certain age for a boy, right?
I guess so.
So they're saying it's the same thing, that this person legitimately feels like they're the opposite gender, and like, who are you to say it's not exactly the same thing? That like, if you wouldn't like being called the wrong gender all the time, then like, because they believe that person's being called the wrong gender.
Well, I mean, I would have a peace of mind in the sense that I have, as modest as it might be, male apparatus, Alice. So I would only be so hurt. So
well,
I
yeah,
would
but
know
they don't have
that
any peace of mind because they're not, so that makes it harder. Their self-perception is based entirely upon what other people think of them, because they believe that their actual biological gender is determined by, looking like it and people thinking you are it. So, if it, last time I checked, I thought we were supposed to not teach kids to base their entire reality of who they think they are on, how other people perceive them. But what do I know?
All right, so I didn't even mean to start on this. It's just that's so amazing. Here's the full audio. This is Nick Ferrari of the BBC talking to Rachel Reeves of the Labour Party, asking her this question. Just watch how she just totally, eventually just crumbles after so many tremors.
I wonder if I can start. And we've talked about many things down the years, Rachel Reeves, but I have to put it to you, the same question that was put to the party leader. Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick, and it's great to talk to you.
Good to have you on.
I just think that this issue has just become so divisive and toxic, and it pits people against each other, both groups who face discrimination in society, women and trans women. And I just find this debate incredibly unhelpful and unproductive, to be totally honest. At this conference, I want to speak about issues that affect people, whatever their gender
and we will
whatever
get to those,
their
I assure you.
sexuality.
But is it transphobic, yes or no?
Look, is it transphobic? Look, I don't even know how to start answering these questions. I just don't find them.
The party
helpful.
leader suggests it is. So what do you as Shadow Chancellor say?
I think that people should be able to identify with the gender that they feel comfortable with.
Respectfully, Shadow Chancellor, that wasn't my question. My question is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that.
Why is that?
Because if somebody, why are we having to discuss parts of women's anatomy
Because
on the radio?
Because one of your colleagues feels unable to attend your
And
conference.
she should feel safe attending our conference. But I don't feel comfortable talking about women's anatomies and different parts of women's bodies with you, Nick, or frankly with anybody else. But if somebody identifies as a woman and a man, or a man, they should be able to do so, whatever their body parts are.
Thank you.
And this is part of a trend. Like, The Lancet just got slammed. This is a scientific journal because they came out with a big opinion piece that the headline of the piece was, "Historically, the anatomy and physiology of bodies with vaginas have been neglected."
So where, though, if you're going to have science at all, how can you, in your scientific formulations, how can you add in the feelings and sensitivities of others and still have a credible clinical experiment?
I would believe that you can't.
It's the same way with the coronavirus stuff where scientifically you can't be in groups, and Black Lives Matter does it, and then scientifically that one's okay.
Well, did you see the thing today? I think this was in the Boston Globe, this thing about the masks in schools. Massachusetts extended the mask mandate thing until November 1 in the schools. And then it's like up to the schools what to do after that. But in the Boston Globe article about it, they quote Dr. Shira Doran, an infectious disease physician at Tufts Medical Center, who said that it's not needed for scientific reasons. It's needed to provide a level of comfort to ease the anxiety of people in the school buildings and their families.
Wait a
She
second.
said, we need a little more time for people to see and feel it's safe, and we don't have an out-of-control outbreak situation.
So wait a second. Wait, what is her title?
She's the infectious disease physician and hospital epidemiologist at Tufts Medical Center who has been advising the state.
And
She
doctor
said-
of psychology too, or no?
She said that the plan to extend universal masking makes sense, though not for scientific reasons. It's needed to provide a level of comfort to ease the anxiety of people in the school buildings and their families, she said. We need a little more time for people to see and feel it's safe. And
That's
we don't
psychotic.
Have it out
That's
of
psychotic. How did I
control.
not see that? Is that brand new? Did you send that to me?
This was sent to me by a friend today.
That is completely
text.
and totally psychotic. That is crazy. So why is she used as a medical principle in this story, by the way? If this is out of her purview.
It would seem so.
Yes. My God. Oh, everything is effed. Everything is stupid. What a time. What a time. You know what? They start coming in with the exceptions. Now it's not scientific anymore. Believe the science, and then believe what feels good, and believe how it makes you feel.
We
and if
need
it
the
makes you
mandate.
feel good to believe that a cervix is determinative in what somebody is, then do it. And if it doesn't, then don't do it. This is okay. We need to be nuked and destroyed. I'm done with this Earth. I'm done. Okay. Speaking of drone strikes on civilians, today was by far the most, I don't know if it's damaging, because damaging has a lot to do with how much information the media is going to disseminate to people. But today was on the merits, just simply on the record, the most devastating day for the Biden administration. Essentially, we put a bow on his incompetence in Afghanistan. You had Mark Milley, Mackenzie, the guy who runs CENTCOM, and Lloyd Austin on Capitol Hill. Mm-hmm. And among other things, of course, the big question is, why did Biden pull the troops out in such a hurry? Why did he pull the troops out? Mm-hmm. You guys are the primary advisors to him. Well, why did he do this?
Well, I think because it could not possibly have been predicted how fast it collapsed. Nobody could possibly have known that. I mean, Biden said that a bunch of times. Nobody knew that.
Right. So Biden, do you remember last month, Biden, George Stephanopoulos said, did anybody tell you to keep some people there? Anybody tell you to keep some people there? And Stephanopoulos uses 2,500 because that's what was leaked to him by probably Mark Milley and everybody else.
Mark Milley seems to be a prolific leaker.
Absolutely. Well, here he is.
The president has not shied away.
No, that's not him. Where's Steph? Here we go.
No one told, your military advisors did not tell you, no, we should just keep 2,500 troops. It's been a stable situation for the last several years. We can do that. We can continue to do that.
No one said that to me that I can recall.
That is...
It's a helpful little extra clause at the end of that sentence.
So
that
here's
I think helps him out.
General Mackenzie in short today.
I recommended that we maintain 2,500 troops in Afghanistan. I'm confident that the president heard all the recommendations and listened to them very thoughtfully.
So now here's Tom Cotton going through General Milley, General Mackenzie, and Lloyd Austin.
I can tell you my personal opinion and my assessment if that's what you want.
Yes, please.
Yes, my assessment was back in the fall of 20, and it remained consistent throughout, that we should keep a steady state of 2,500, and it could bounce up to 3,500, maybe something like that. in order to move toward a negotiated gated solution.
Did you ever present that assessment personally to President Biden?
I don't discuss exactly what my conversations are with the sitting president in the Oval Office, but I can tell you what my personal opinion was, and I'm always candid.
General McKenzie, do you share that assessment?
Senator, I do share that assessment.
Did you ever present that opinion personally to President Biden?
Again, I'm not going to be able to comment on those executive discussions.
Yeah, he's going to be able to only leak those discussions.
Did General Miller ever present that opinion personally to President Biden?
I think it would be best to ask him. I believe that his opinion was well heard.
Secretary Austin, President Biden last month in an interview with George Stephanopoulos said that no military leader advised him to leave a small troop presence in Afghanistan. Is that true?
Senator Cotton, I believe that, well, first of all, I know the president to be an honest and forthright man. And secondly...
It's a simple question, Secretary Austin. He said no senior military leader advised him to leave a small troop presence behind. Is that true or not?
Trying to salvage his soul right there. Please show mercy upon Mr. Biden. He is a forthright and honest man.
Did these officer and General Miller's recommendations get to the president personally?
Their input was received by the president and considered by the president, for sure. In terms of what they specifically recommended, Senator, as they just said.
He can't say it. Their input was received and presented to the president, for sure. That is what we call solidarity, Alice. Those three gentlemen are in solidarity that they told the oak tree in the White House to keep troops there, to not do this. And they spoke with one voice and told him, no, you can't do it this way. And he said, hell with it. We're doing it anyway. Which is, of course, why this entire thing collapsed. This is devastating. This is horrible. This tells you that everything he said subsequently, everything he said in that Saki's still saying. We'll play Saki right here, actually, talking about this.
The president has not shied away from the historical implications of leaving Afghanistan. He's noted that it was time to end a 20-year war. He has said that he is not going to pass this war on to a fifth president. So, given that he understands the gravity and he has framed it in the historical context, I know that you said you're not going to detail private conversations, but can you give us a little bit more of an explanation as to why not? Doesn't the American public, given the historical gravity of that decision, don't they deserve to know who was advising the president who was on the other side of that argument about leaving troops in Afghanistan?
I would say first that what the American public can know and understand is that the president will welcome and take and ask for and push for a range of opinions on every national security decision that he makes. And we're not going to detail those private discussions, private decisions that happen in the Situation Room for the public. What the president has also been very candid and clear about, and will continue to be, and you outlined much of this, is why he made the decision that he made. And even as it relates to the recommendation on 2,500, it's also important for the American public to understand that was not going to be a sustainable number over the long term. And what the decision he was making was about was not sending their daughters, their sons, their grandchildren back to fight a war that the Afghans would not fight themselves. And it was about a phase, not a long-term recommendation.
Ooh. Back to that filthy line about the Afghans would not fight themselves. Of course, in the last 5 months,
and the implication. He's not going to send your sons and daughters into this anymore.
Well,
how many more have to die?
He withdrew. We withdrew all the support capabilities for the Afghans, so it was expedited.
We didn't let them have the people who maintain the planes, who were offering to stay, who are contractors.
Right. And for her to say it's not a long-term fix, the 2,500, it's like, I guess we'll never know. Guess who knows? Because they're gone, and all that remains are a bunch of... Anyway, it was all bad news during these hearings today.
It's going to sure be interesting when the books are written of the... in the future of the history of the administration, 20 years from now or whatever.
So what happens now? What happens if you're Joe Biden? The Joint Chiefs, the Secretary of Defense, your CENTCOM guy have all just stabbed you.
Yeah, we told him.
In front of Congress. That is a tough look. That is now, if you had a press, obviously, you would have Biden respond directly to them.
Mm-hmm.
And vice versa, and vice versa, and vice versa. But we'll see what happens. But this is, I mean, it just goes to show you, well, that's it. I mean, it is what exactly the disaster we think it is. It is. I don't expect that Mayorkas on the border is going to last very long. I don't think these guys can last very long, as a matter of fact. I mean, Trump had all sorts of turnover, but I don't know if we had one of these. I've never seen one of these where the president, the civilian leader of a country, is contradicted directly by military advisors, probably because those guys saw what happened last month and were heartbroken, devastated by it.
Yeah. I mean, so, you know, obviously, like, when the Afghanistan thing happened, there was, like, all this speculation, like, oh, this will be out of the news. Americans don't care about foreign policy, this, that, the other thing. But it really speaks to more than foreign policy. This is really like a judgment thing. You know, when you're talking about people elected Biden for, like, the normalcy and to not have a hothead in the White House or with the nuclear football or whatever, that they didn't want Trump, who was unpredictable and might make bad decisions that went against what the experts were telling him. You know, if you have all Biden's experts in here telling him that, you know, you need to do this or there's going to be a bad result, and then he does it and he doesn't listen to them and there's a bad result and the American people really don't like the result, you know, he can lecture us about how this was the only way it was going to end until he's blue in the face. But the American people do not like what happened in Afghanistan. It was a bad look. Mm-hmm. There's still American citizens stuck there. You know, we lost 13 service members completely unnecessarily. This whole thing was a disaster of epic proportions. And a lot of people, you know, even people who wanted to be out of Afghanistan, hate that this happened and happened this way. So it's very bad for Biden, I think, that this continues to be in the news cycle, that they said what they did in front of Congress and you know, made a liar out of him, essentially.
Yeah, Milley said that we were diminished on a world stage, essentially. Like you said, they said that they had given the president warning. They said that the president didn't check with them till 10 days after the fall of Kabul.
It paints a picture of a stubborn old man who's not listening to anybody and is just doing what he feels like he wants to do without any input. I mean, it's the worst possible look, and his approval has been in free fall since this happened. And I mean, like, I don't think this is going to do him any favors that this has gone on now either. You know, it's obviously not as high profile as the events themselves were, but you know, these quotes are out here now, and this is, I mean, Milley especially seems to be like Mr. Leak. So he's like,
oh yeah,
going.
Well, now
he worked with Woodward for his Trump books and all that stuff. He's like, he's pleased with what he did with Trump and all the things.
He's also making headlines on purpose when he says that there's more likely to be a terrorist attack. Well, then.
Mm-hmm. And we must remember that the Taliban was and remains a terrorist organization, and they still have not broken ties with al-Qaeda. I have no illusions who we are dealing with. It remains to be seen whether or not the Taliban can consolidate power, or if the country will further fracture into civil war. But we must continue to protect the United States of America and its people from terrorist attacks coming from Afghanistan. A reconstituted al-Qaeda or ISIS with aspirations to attack the United States is a very real possibility. And those conditions, to include activity in ungoverned spaces, could present themselves in the next 12 to 36 months. That mission will be much harder now, but not impossible.
What happens after 36 months? So that's where we are. He said that the Taliban didn't honor the Trump agreement, which means it wasn't that we weren't held to any agreement because the Taliban didn't. Trump didn't didn't honor it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really where we are. It was a tough day. Tough day for the president. This is a tough time with him running around now, and they're down to terrible messaging. So now he's down with price tags like Psaki is. The administration is now trying to glom onto what probably is, if it passes, their last agenda achievement, legislative achievement anyway, with infrastructure telling us it's not costing anything.
We talk about price tags. It is zero price tag on the debt. We're going to pay for everything we spend. So it's not, people, understandably, well, it started off at $6 trillion, now it's $3.5 trillion, now is it going to be 2.9? It's going to be zero.
After you pay it. Right. It's going to be zero, he said. I mean, if you're down to that, if that's how you have to try to sell something, the thing that's the most expensive thing ever, and try to tell people, no, it's the freest thing ever, then you're out of ideas. You're just trying to use, hypnotism, to move legislation.
Well, yeah, it's a scam, like every other scam that people try and get you into, where they try and tell you that, like, by spending some money, you just have to buy this thing, or you just have to, get this starter kit, and soon you'll be making money hand over fist, but you have to spend the money in order to get the payback. Like, you'll net lots of money. It's true. Like, no, you don't. Like, when you're spending money, you're just spending money. It's, it bothers me a lot that they're going with this line that the bill is free because they're raising taxes to pay for it. We talked about it at length yesterday, so I won't do my whole rant again, but just the insanity of thinking that that's what people mean when they want to know how much something costs is that they're asking you, how much does it cost after you've raised my taxes to pay for it? This is why people hate Washington, D.C.
Of course it is. Which is why it would be nice to have a new president in there, which brings me to governor death sentence, Alice. In Florida, Ron DeSantis says decline in men going to college is a good sign. Governor says men are choosing trades like boat building over college educations. Governor Ron DeSantis, this is from FloridaPolitics.com. DeSantis, who has degrees from Harvard Law and Yale, thinks it might be a good sign fewer men are attending college compared to women. DeSantis, addressing the International Boat Builders exhibition in Tampa, suggested men aren't going to college as much as women because they're shunning traditional higher education for trades. Here's a quote from DeSantis. There was actually an article in the Wall Street Journal recently about, decline in college for men or something, DeSantis continued, deepening his voice briefly for comic effect to introduce the article highlighting that 3 and 5 college students are now women, with men feeling lost. I guess there was a decline in the number of men, the percentage of men going to college or whatever. And they acted like this was a bad thing. And honestly, to me, I think that is probably a good sign, the governor added. Because I think people are looking at this and they're acknowledging, some of these universities are not giving you very much for your money. You're not necessarily going to get ahead in that. DeSantis said people were choosing to pursue some of these high demand areas where you're going to be able to do well with basically no debt, before jumping back to soften his comments. If you want to go to college, I'm not saying don't, DeSantis advised. This is written very oddly. If you don't want to go to college, I'm not saying don't. If you want to go to college, I'm not saying don't, DeSantis advised. It is very good for a lot of people, but certainly it's not the right thing for everyone. Decrying a perceived stigma against trade education, DeSantis couldn't resist taking one more swipe at people who borrowed money in pursuit of liberal arts degrees. Here's a quote. In fact, kind of the joke's on some of the people who've gone the university route, and they wind up deep in debt with no opportunities, and so they would have been better off maybe trying something else, DeSantis said, adding a nod to the boat building sector. I'm sure this industry needs good folks. You have good folks. Driving the trucks, you have good people who are electrical. There have never been a better time to do it, DeSantis, a graduate of Ivy League universities, contended. So I think that this is. I'm sorry. I'm just watching. I'm just reading a comment here at the end of this thing, which appears to be a death threat against DeSantis. So I think that's great. I think that absolutely this college bubble, these institutions that are charging so much to make kids into a-holes with no discernible skills, let them crumble, baby. I am all for this. As a cutter myself, I am all for this more than ever.
Well, yeah, and DeSantis is an interesting guy. You can tell he reads a lot of news, for sure, because he's like so right on where conservative media is and where like conservative people are talking about stuff culturally. Like the fact that he's saying this now at this time just shows that he's like so much got his head in the game of that stuff. So that's definitely interesting to me that he's like, he watches that stuff and reads that stuff and is like seeing what's getting shared by conservatives on Twitter. You know, like we did not this particular story about men leaving college, but one a few weeks before that was pretty similar. And, you know, we talked about that a lot. These are like the conversations that a lot of real people are having. So it's very like on point and of the moment. And that's a smart political skill that he has, you know, to be in the right conversation at the right time. When, you know, like a lot of these governors that do have like pretty good conservative chops on paper, like just don't have that necessarily. Like, remember when Asa Hutchinson went on Tucker and just got eviscerated over the trans stuff? And like, I mean, like, how do you not know the conversations that conservatives are having around this stuff and like what Tucker's point on it is and everything, and not know you're going to get destroyed when you go on there?
I don't know. I think that he was desperately hoping for a lifeline. That there's a chance I'm going to go in here and get mauled. There's a chance this guy bails me out, and it didn't happen.
But I feel like that wouldn't happen to DeSantis because he is so aware of the conversations that are happening, you know, in that world, our world, kind of. You know, he's reading the same tweets that we're reading, basically, when we do show prep, which is funny to me.
Which is one of the reasons people who liked Trump like him, because he's all the good stuff about Trump with seemingly not the bad stuff.
Right.
And it's like just a better version. And the fact that he can speak plainly like this and talk like this about, I mean, when you're dissing college and even dissing college for trade school, this is something that at least since almost the last 100 years or so, that is counter to the American narrative. You are to work hard, and finally, since we're a new country still, that you might be at this point the third generation in your family to get a chance to go to college, to get a liberal arts degree, and to eschew that as being something that's a waste of time. It is still, I mean, I still think that most generally parents and people are going for the status. It's all about the parents. You know, to say, and I don't know, will I have that? I don't think so.
Well, yeah, and I think that it's something in particular that the type of people that are into Trump really feel very keenly, because it's one of these things that, I mean, the college non-college divide is like the biggest predictor of Trump support amongst everything else that there is. And I think that part of the reason for that is because there is this kind of weird friction around the status symbol of college. I mean, I think there are a lot of people, like the type of people who would never vote for Trump, who, you know, who still like just think about you a little bit differently if you didn't go to college or didn't finish college or whatever. And, you know, there's, and people feel that, you know, and it very much cuts to the heart of like what the Trump thing is and the way people talked about Trump and talked down about him and the way he dressed and his just uncouthness. And he didn't have like the social signals of the type of status that going to college and being a college person gets you. And I think that that a lot of Trump people have that. It's a lot of like small business owners who didn't go to college. It's a lot of tradespeople who didn't go to college and have done really well for themselves in life in a lot of cases. Not always, you know, some of the people are struggling, but a lot of Trump voters are doing okay, but they still feel this just disdain from a lot of the people that were telling them not to vote for Trump. Right. And they feel it they hear the same thing in their voice when they talk about Trump as when they talk about them and them not having college degrees and everything else. And And so I think that in particular, that thing about going to college or not going to college and how people feel about it, because it's really a big part of the thing about sending your kids to college is about, how it makes you feel inside to tell people that your kid is going to whatever school. I mean, I even thought it was interesting when we had this conversation a couple weeks ago on our podcast, somebody made the YouTube comment and it really stuck with me. And they said they're in IT, which is another great field that you can get into without having college.
Right.
He said, he used to feel really like he missed out by not having gone to college, and that, now he's glad he didn't go. And I think that that's going to be something that we hear more and more of as people realize that there's nothing to this, that like you've been looked down on and told you're not as smart and you don't have the right background or the right credentials your whole life. And the people with all the credentials really didn't know much more than you did.
And I think that's right. And I think you hit the nail on the head. And for a lot of people, that's why Trump was a middle finger to those people. And I also think that some people who are very credentialed, who went to college, also have a certain disdain for others who I think they think act elitist and act way... just act in an arrogant fashion and carry themselves.
Right.
And so they're saying, you know what, I'm not even the MAGA hat kind of guy, but I'm getting one for this election because you're an a-hole, and you always have been.
Yeah. It's funny. You and I had a conversation off the air last night a little bit just about growing up. You grew up in Winchester and I grew up in Lexington, about growing up in towns where, you're not necessarily... You're on the scrappy, ragged edge of the middle class or whatever. Elizabeth Warren said, I had a great life and you had a great life in many, many ways. But both of us weren't necessarily exactly the typical kid in those towns. And both of us, I think, in various ways sometimes felt it. And I think that there's a lot of that in Trump support because a lot of the people in those towns now, in Lexington and in Winchester and in Wellesley and in towns like that, they can't imagine why someone would vote for Trump.
Right.
And it really, because, they don't know anyone who thinks that way or would vote that way. And you and I both know, because we live among them and we've passed through their ranks unrecognized, that it's because they just assume that you're like them if you're in your ranks and you can sort of pass a little bit for them. And so, you hide what you're like from them because they can't relate to you. They don't know who you are because they don't want to know because they're not interested. They can't imagine people that are different from them in their world.
Right. I completely agree. And it is an interesting thing coming from a town, but not having especially a very nice town. These are very, very nice towns. It's a couple of the nicest towns in Massachusetts, but not having that typical town experience.
Right.
It's totally different. And yeah, especially where we were. I mean, it's not a story that's interesting, really. It was a really ideal childhood. And it wasn't a tough childhood.
I didn't. My life was not hard, but it's just interesting because there's something there to that, kind of being forced into a situation with people who really cannot imagine what your life is like.
Which brings us to Winchester. Mark Milley,
Winchester guy.
but he grew up in the good part of Winchester.
Oh.
You know who else did?
He has a Boston accent, though.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. Mark Milley. And you know who else grew up in a good part of Winchester? He grew up in a better part than me. How about this?
Okay.
Glenn Doherty.
Okay.
Pete Guston, he's a big voice guy for Fox News. He's the guy who does Fox News. Mark Ockerbloom. Those guys, Guston and Ockerbloom, grew up on the hillside cascading down from Lexington. That's where the money was. And go ahead.
And who recently defended our chicken shirts.
Exactly.
Kirk Minahan.
The Minahans, yes. Kirk lived on the beautiful
He's from the good
side.
part.
He's from the good part.
What is it? Is it Johnson Street?
Johnson Road, right.
Johnson
exactly.
Road? Yeah.
The one leading to Lexington, which is why he talks about, actually, on his podcast about jogging. He lives in Lexington now. Jogging into Winchester all the time, and I assume that's why, he's probably still around that area there.
It is a great town, and both are great towns, and I had lots of great things about growing up there,
Mm-hmm.
but but it is interesting. It does give you insight when you're sort of like partially on the inside, but not quite into like how that universe works.
Yeah, as a kid, and you can see this from my graduation picture, I always wondered, like, how do all the guys in my class all know how to dress so awesome? How do they all have the right hair at the right time? I still had my mullet in 1991, whatever. They didn't. They got rid of those years ago before. They all had the new 90210 kind of thing. And, like, they all knew how to drive the right cars. They all had a certain kind of confidence and rapport. Like, not they all, but a lot of them in the school. It's like, because they had very similar upbringings with moms who made sure that they had the right haircut at the right time. It was really important, etc. And I hate those bastards. Okay.
Yeah, remember a couple of years ago at Christmas, I got the kids the like little Fitbit watches, and they all were competing, and like it just happened that year, like every parent all got their kids little Fitbit watches, and they all like had them at school and were competing with each other, and it lasted like 2 months, and then nobody used them anymore. But it was funny because they came home after winter break had ended, and they were like, oh, guess what, everybody else has them too, we all have the same ones. And your brother turned to us and went, imagine what that's like, getting the present that everybody's supposed to get that year. Never happened to me. It was a coincidence that year, though. Normally doesn't happen for our kids either. So never fear. They'll grow up sufficiently traumatized and destroyed by their childhoods to make something of themselves. So, yeah, that happened once, and it'll never happen again. But every once in a while you hit it as a parent. But
All right, Alice. You know what? Did I have something else to say? Did we have anything else in the show notes, Alice, that we needed to bring up? Not sure if we did, or let's see. No.
Well, the basketball players, no? You don't want to talk about the basketball players?
NBA players are coming out against the vaccines, are questioning these really intelligent guys speaking intelligently about it. And it's interesting to see just any young men at all, needless to say, athletes who sometimes aren't the brightest of the pack. But these guys are really bright. And they have vaccine questions.
Well, and some of them have had COVID, so
right.
they don't feel they need to get vaccinated.
Here's Jonathan Isaac. He's one of these guys.
Your comments that appeared on that about you not getting a vaccination, why you don't want to get
Orlando
a vaccination,
Magic.
And were you misquoted in that article?
I would start by saying that I was pretty badly misrepresented in the Rolling Stone article. And because of that, I can understand anyone who may say they don't transparently or overtly trust the media. In a frustrated tweet yesterday, I had noted that true journalism was dying. And to that, I would say that I appreciate every single one of you, those that try their best to correctly share the thoughts, the ideas, and the heart of the people that they're asking questions of. I'm not anti-vax. I'm not anti-medicine. I'm not anti-science. I didn't come to my current vaccination status by studying Black history or watching Donald Trump press conferences. I have nothing but the utmost respect for every...
Damn, this kid's awesome. Yeah. I hadn't heard this cut before.
Every healthcare worker and person in Orlando and all across the world that have worked tirelessly to keep us safe. My mom has worked in healthcare for a really long time. I thank God, I'm grateful that I live in a society where vaccines are possible and we can protect ourselves and have the means to protect ourselves in the first place. But with that being said, it is my belief that the vaccine status of every person should be their own choice and completely up to them without bullying, without being pressured, or without being forced into doing so. I'm not ashamed to say that I'm uncomfortable with taking the vaccine at this time. I think that we're all different. We all come from different places. We've all had different experiences and hold dear to different beliefs. And what it is that you do with your body when it comes to putting medicine in there should be your choice, free of the ridicule and the opinion.
This dude is going places. I don't even know. Is he already a Hall of Famer? Because I haven't watched basketball since 1983, so I don't know. But he's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. I love this guy.
Yeah. Is
Dang.
this in the ones that I sent you?
Yeah.
That you found? Okay.
Well, I had played one of him and the other guy, Bradley Beal, earlier as well.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, on the early show. So I had seen them, but the different.
But yeah, I mean, thank God there are people who have some kind of platform saying this stuff because it's completely reasonable, and thank goodness he's saying it not just to a reporter in Rolling Stone who's going to misrepresent his comments then in the magazine, but out loud in a press conference with cameras rolling so people can hear what he really said. Because who can disagree with this? Who can disagree with somebody saying, I believe in science, I believe in healthcare, I like doctors and nurses and medicine as much as the next person, but I don't need to take this vaccine right now, and I don't know why you're all yelling at me to do so. Like, it's very weird, and like the attitude about the mandating the vaccine and Biden saying we need to get to 97 or 98% of the population, which I assume is like everybody who doesn't have a medical exemption, basically. Like, that's a lot of people, 97 or 98% of the country. I don't know that we have that kind of vaccine coverage for other vaccines, the ones that we give all kids in childhood. I mean, I think more of them opt out, but I think it's great that there are people saying this stuff out loud and sounding reasonable while they say it, and and coming from all different backgrounds and all different political perspectives, because these are not extreme, outrageous positions.
No.
And I think sometimes like this hysteria of like politicizing everything just makes it seem like that everybody's some like ivermectin swilling lunatic. And
this guy, along with a bunch of these college kids saying F Joe Biden at stadiums, along with a cross-section of this country, including people who want to stop being called Latinx, are going to be the next counterculture movement. And because all the authority figures are big government, intelligence services, big tech, academia, those all trying to nip free speech. And you've got these people pushing back, saying, enough of I don't want to, you're whether they're being bullied by Rolling Stone magazine or shut out of social media because Jen Psaki flags something in Facebook. People have had enough, and it makes me excited, especially when you hear voices like that guy right there. It gets very excited about what we've got going in the future.
I don't know. Yeah, we were talking about it the other day that, it's a weird feeling a little bit, but it's almost like there's a little bit of hope in the air that not everyone's insane, that the tide is turning, that they can't just, tar all Republicans or conservatives or even all people who don't want to take the vaccine with this brush of being, evil white supremacist crazy people, and that that their like Potemkin village is falling down of all this like fake narrative that they've built up, that like Trump was mean at the border and Trump was unhinged and dangerous on foreign policy, and that he was going after his political enemies, or that he was working with foreign governments or whatever else. Like, I mean, literally everything they say about Trump is made up, is a lie, and people start to see it like they're going too far. Like he said about the media, he didn't sound like a person who hated the media before he set out on this journey. Like, he talked to the Rolling Stone person, but those types of actions that they do when they like just misrepresent someone's words and make them out to be a crazy person when they have a completely reasonable position, that radicalizes more people than anything. They complained a lot that Donald Trump attacked the media. They attack themselves. They destroy their own credibility more every day with every stupid story they publish than Donald Trump could do in a million years. Donald Trump doesn't control people's perceptions of the media.
Are you suggesting that the media, Alice, has dropped the ball?
Love your dogs. Live here. Yeah, thanks. Champ's an old one. Which one's the old one, President?
Is there going to be ice cream in Cincinnati?
Grater's ice cream.
Yeah,
raspberry chip. I don't think so, but we'll have to. I don't know. Now I really want. I'm sure he's aware of it.
Mr. President, what did you order?
Chocolate chip.
Oh!
What is your message to Republicans who are prepared to block the January 6th commission.
Eat some chocolate chip.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much again, everyone. You guys make me feel hopeful, too. The fact that you guys are out there listening and commenting and emailing us and stuff. You can find us on Twitter at BurnBarrelPod. We're also at burnbarrelpodcast.com, facebook.com/burnbarrel. You can email us. That's burnbarrelpodcast@gmail.com. We are the Burn Barrel Podcast on Gab and on Parler. We have video channels on YouTube and on Rumble, all those places. Leave an Apple Podcast review if you get a chance.